Did you start playing D&D because of Baldur's Gate 3? Or maybe you've always wanted to try Dungeons & Dragons, but every time you open the rulebook, it feels like you're studying for an exam that you didn't sign up for. You're not alone. Many of my players have brought up the issue, and often don't feel like they have the time to even read the basic rules before coming to a session. I wanted to make a video that simplified things, but I still think you should at least read the basic rules before you go and sit down at the table, especially if it's your first time playing. D&D has been around since 1974, and it's gone through many iterations and rule changes, which is a topic for another video. While it's more accessible than ever, it can still feel overwhelming at first glance. Ability scores, proficiency bonuses, advantage, spell slots, it's a lot to remember. And it does seem like math, but the truth is the game is actually very simple, no calculus involved, I promise, and it's easiest to learn it in bits and pieces as you go along. With that in mind, today we'll be discussing just the essential rules you need to sit down at the table and understand what's happening. If you've been curious, confused, or intimidated, hopefully this is a bit of a reset for you. At its heart, D&D is collaborative storytelling. One person, the Dungeon Master, describes the world. They control the monsters, the environment, and all the NPCs. Everyone else just plays a single main character in that world, the protagonists. Together, you create a story that no one really planned in advance. So, if the players are protagonists, the DM is kind of like the director and the antagonists. There's no script or dialogue trees like in video games. This play is done through the magic of improv. Well, some DMs, like myself, get so passionate about the world building that we do write down some predictive dialogue, but I wouldn't generally recommend doing this since your players are probably going to surprise you and do something that never would have occurred to you. Anyway, the point is, there's no programmed path, so you can't really do anything wrong per se. The DM presents a situation, and the players then decide what they want to do. The rules just exist to help resolve the uncertainty in your decision. So, the core gameplay loop looks like this. The DM describes the situation, you're walking through a forested path, the players declare what they want to do, they want to look for tracks, and then the dice determine how successful they are. Did they find any? That's it. If there's no uncertainty, there usually is no roll. If you try something risky, dramatic, or uncertain, that's when the dice are brought out. The game flows through conversation, imagination, and moments of randomness like that. D&D is less like a video game and more like controlled chaos with friends. D&D is built on what's often called the 3 pillars of play. The Dungeon Master's Guide presents these as combat, exploration, and social interaction. Understanding these helps you to see the full scope of the game. Combat is the most structured pillar. This is when you fight monsters, defend villages, duel rivals, or survive ambushes. Combat is turn-based, and includes actions, bonus actions, and positioning. It's tactical, dramatic, and often done on a grid. It can be done through theater of the mind as well, but the grid really helps players visualize the fight. Exploration is done outside of direct conflict, investigating ancient ruins, disarming traps, traveling through dangerous wildernesses through a hex crawl, or maybe just solving a puzzle to open a mysterious temple door. This pillar is about interacting with the environment and often does use skill checks. Social interaction, which is my favorite part, and where the true acting really comes out, is talking your way out through situations, negotiating with a noble, intimidating a bandit, maybe persuading a guard, or deceiving a cultist. This is where gameplay immersion really shines, and where characters can come to life. You get a chance to express yourself in a way that you can't really do in real life. A lot of new players assume D&D is only combat, and while I do prefer games with lots of action myself, if you only focus on fighting, you're missing 2/3 of the whole experience. Sometimes a movie or play needs to take a break from an action scene to frame the whole picture. Almost everything in D&D revolves around one die, the 20-sided die, also called the D20. When you attempt something uncertain, you roll a D20, add your modifier, which is on your character sheet, and compare it to a number called a difficulty class, or DC. The DC just means how hard is it to do something. For example, like picking up a 50-pound rock. Your DM then decides what the DC is. If you meet or beat the DC, you succeed. If you don't, you fail, or sometimes partially succeed. Your modifier usually comes from one of your ability scores, plus something called your proficiency bonus, if you're trained in that thing. Proficiency is a passive bonus that just goes up at certain levels. The game uses the same structure for attacking, skill checks, saving throws, almost everything. Once you understand the base D20 system, you've already got 99% of the game down pat. You're probably wondering, what are these ability scores and skills he keeps talking about? Well, your character has 6 ability scores. These represent your core strengths and weaknesses. Strength measures your physical power. Dexterity measures your agility and reflexes. Constitution, your endurance and toughness. Intelligence, your reasoning and knowledge. Wisdom, your perception and awareness. Charisma measures your presence and force of personality. Each score translates into a smaller number called a modifier, usually somewhere between -1 and +5 for most characters. That modifier is then what you add to your D20 rolls. Skills are tied to these core abilities. For example, Stealth is tied to Dexterity, Arcana is tied to Intelligence, and Persuasion is tied to Charisma. Here's an important mindset shift. Players shouldn't be asking to roll skills. They should be describing what they want to do. For example, instead of me saying, I want to roll Persuasion, you say, I'm going to try to convince the guards that we're supposed to be here. The DM then gets to decide what ability or skill applies. If you really wanted, you could even act out your persuasion through dialogue, and if the DM actually feels persuaded, they might give you advantage, or they might just give it to you outright. D&D is about describing your actions and role-playing them, and then applying the mechanics second. Oh boy, we're probably at the longest part of the video now, because now we're going to be talking about combat. So combat in D&D is turn-based and structured to keep things fair and organized. Sometimes combat can be long, but it can have severe consequences for the story, so it's important to pay attention. When combat begins, everyone rolls initiative. Think of initiative like your speed. That determines the turn order, just like a turn-based video game. From here, each character takes a turn in sequence. On your turn, you typically have 3 major resources: movement, an action, and possibly a bonus action. Movement lets you reposition, usually up to your speed. For example, most characters have a movement speed of 30 feet starting out. If using a grid, this would mean you can move 6 squares in a straight line, if each square is about 5 feet. Your action is your main activity: attacking, casting a spell, dashing, helping a friend, or doing something else creative like throwing a chair. There are many actions, virtually anything you could think of, just ask your DM. Bonus actions are smaller, class-specific abilities that certain features allow. If an activity says it's a bonus action, you can do it alongside your action either before or after. You also get 1 reaction per round, which happens outside of your turn, like making an opportunity attack when someone tries to run away from you. There are other reactions you can take, but they all respond to something that someone else does. When you attack, you roll a d20 and add your attack modifier. If the result meets or exceeds the target armor class, you hit. The armor class represents how tough something is or how good they are at moving out of the way. Then, once you meet the armor class, or beat it, you roll the damage. Many spells don't actually use an attack roll. Instead, the spell just goes off, but the enemy or creature has to roll to see if they resist or get out of the way of the spell. This is known as a saving throw. Hit points represent how much punishment you can take before falling unconscious. When they drop to 0, that's when we start talking about death saving throws. Think of a death saving throw like your last chance gripping onto life. When your character drops to 0 hit points and isn't killed outright, you begin making death saving throws at the start of each of your turns. You roll a d20 with no modifiers. A 10 or a higher is a success, and a 9 or lower is failure. 3 successes mean you stabilize, which means that you stopped rolling your death saving throws, but you remain unconscious, while 3 failures mean your character dies. A natural 20 restores you to 1 hit point immediately, while a natural 1 counts as 2 death saving throw failures. Combat might look complex from the outside, but it's really just a structured conversation with turns and dice. A good DM will try to keep combat engaging and avoid bogging things down too much, but it is your job as players to know what your character can do. Sometimes abilities or spells can impose conditions. Conditions are status effects that change what you can do. For example, if you're prone, you're knocked down, meaning you have to take time, an action, to get back up. If you're restrained, you're limited. If you're blinded, you can't see. If you're charmed, your attitude towards someone shifts. Or maybe you see them as a friend. Conditions modify the rules temporarily. They're rule adjustments layered on top of the core D20 mechanics. Someone who's poisoned isn't feeling well, and so they might have a harder time hitting enemies. This is represented by them having disadvantage on their D20 rolls. With disadvantage, you roll 2 D20s and take the lower result. In contrast, with advantage, you roll 2 D20s and take the higher result. You still add your normal modifiers afterward, The only difference is which die result you use. You gain advantage or disadvantage from circumstances in the game. For example, attacking a prone enemy who's knocked down in melee might give you advantage, while attacking a target you can't see if you're blinded might give you disadvantage. You don't need to memorize them all right away, you just need to know that these conditions do exist and they change how actions function. Spellcasting often intimidates new players. After all, every spell seems to have a different effect, but it all follows the same logic as everything else in the D20 system. Plus, who doesn't want to be magical? Spellcasters have spell slots. These are limited resources which you expend to cast your spells. Think of them like charges to a battery. How much magic do you have inside you at any given point? Or a mana system in a video game. You prepare a list of spells based on your class. When you cast one, you spend a spell slot of that appropriate level. If I cast a level 1 spell, I use a level 1 spell slot. If I cast a level 2 spell, I use a level 2 spell slot, and so on. You can upcast certain spells, making them stronger with a higher slot, but the principle's the same. Cantrips, also known as level 0 spells, are your basic spells. They don't use any slots, and can be cast as often as you'd like. This kind of magic is so easy for you as an adventurer, it doesn't even take any slots. Higher level spell slots can sometimes make spells stronger. For example, if I cast a fireball with a level 9 spell slot, it's going to increase the damage. Spellcasting is really powerful and confusing, but it's still covered by the same D20 mechanics. You roll to hit, or your target rolls a saving throw. The most important rule, arguably, in D&D is respect. Respect for your other players, and respect for the DM. D&D is a shared space. That means sharing your spotlight time, and letting other players have cool moments. It means not interrupting constantly, and remembering that the DM is not your enemy. In fact, a good DM is your ally. They want you to succeed because they want the story to be cool and fun. They want to feel impressive. But success doesn't mean easy. A successful story has challenge. The goal isn't to win D&D. The goal is to create a fun, memorable experience together. This is why many groups have something called a Session Zero, which acts as a conversation before a campaign begins to establish the tone, boundaries, and expectations. Table culture can make or break a campaign before it even begins. If everyone feels safe and respected, the game thrives. In closing, D&D might look complicated from the outside, but when you boil it down, it's simple. You don't need to memorize every rule, you just need curiosity, a willingness to participate, and respect for your fellow human beings. If you're new, welcome, and if you've been playing for years, I encourage you to remember the fundamentals. Thanks for spending your time watching this video. If you liked it or found it helpful, please feel free to like and subscribe for more content. You can also check out my Patreon and Discord in the description below.